Smith, a world-renowned fashion model, businesswoman, restaurateur, television show host, best-selling author, and Alzheimer's advocate, who created a lifestyle brand empire through television shows, bedding and furniture collections, and books on entertaining. She will be remembered for her mantra, whatever you do it with style. We remember, celebrate, and salute the lives of two pathbreakers and trailblazers. Mrs. Katherine Johnson, Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient and genius mathematician. It was her developed equations that helped the NACA, National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, and NASA, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, to successfully orbit the first American astronaut, breaking racial and gender barriers. Her research and contributions were celebrated in the best-selling book, Hidden Figures, and the Oscar-nominated film adaptation.
Yeah, we shall. Oh, we shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, oh, I believe that we shall overcome someday.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. We are here. We are live for the Saturday morning forum here at the Rainbow Push International headquarters. We want to thank everyone who's joining us, whether you're here in person. We also want to thank anyone watching us on the Impact Network and anyone who is listening to us right now on WVON. Remember, there's still time to get here, or you can stream us. You can always stream us on Facebook. Go to Reverend Jackson's Facebook page, or go to the Rainbow Push website at rainbowpush.org. We'd love to have you in this conversation. We have a lot of viewers listening all around from the world today, continents on Africa, North America, Asia, the Caribbean, and everywhere in between. So we're excited to have so many people joining us because it's a special day today. Today is the day of the South Carolina primary for the presidential election. So we're going to be getting into that a little bit later today. We're excited to talk about that. But before we do, I have a couple announcements I want to start us off with. First off, we can do condolences and prayers for Orville Parker, who's son of Rainbow Push Coalition member Rochelle Parker, as well as Carl Walton Sr., father-in-law of Commissioner Dennis Deere. We want to send our well wishes right now to Reverend Dr. Leon Finney, Congressman John Lewis, Joseph Caldwell with Taylorite Cleaners, and Rosa Pritchett with the Cook County Treasurer's Office, plus, of course, Lily Sanders, who is a Rainbow Push member. We have events going on all across the every single day of this week. We always have events going on. Today, you can still make it to the Push Volunteer Open House. It's happening right here at our headquarters at 12:30 p.m. until 2 p.m. You still have time to join that. And then we have every single week, every Monday, you can join Santita Jackson and friends. It's Monday nights at 6 p.m. Every Tuesday, you can volunteer either at noon or 6 p.m. We have our oratorical at 6:30 p.m. And then Contracts and Hire 360 Thursdays from 6 to 8 p.m. Last but not least, we have our HBCU tour classes, which are Saturdays from 12 to 3. So there's a lot going on. There are a lot of different ways to get involved, and we're really excited about that. So thank you again, everyone, for being here. We are here in an interesting time. Tonight is the South Carolina primary. It is the first time in a primary that we've had a substantial number of percentage of the vote is African Americans. 27.8% of the South Carolina population is African American. So we're going to learn something tonight, I think, going into Super Tuesday on Tuesday. But let's go ahead and get started. We have, again, a lot of great speakers today, and I want to just have us start off with a few different videos that we have for you. So sit tight, pay attention. We're going to watch a couple videos now. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maria Pappas, Cook County Treasurer. What we've done is made it possible for you to access any piece of property that you've owned in Cook County for the last 20 years to see whether or not you are entitled to $136 million. Go to cookcountytreasure.com to your property tax overview. As soon as you get there, punch in your address. You'll immediately see a picture of your home, your property address, your 14-digit PIN number, and your mailing information. You're gonna punch view your property tax information, scroll down, and you're gonna see whether or not you paid the last 2 bills, and you're gonna see your next payment. If you scroll down just a little further, you're gonna be able to tell, going back 20 years, whether or not you overpaid. In 2004, they overpaid by $327 and $248. And they continue to do it in 05 and 06 and 07. They read the bill the wrong way. We're here to give them the money back. They will punch apply now and be able to get the money back. If you scroll down just a little bit more, you're gonna go to the exemption area. Here's a person who got their senior exemptions in 2015, 2016, and 2017, but not in 2018. Each one of these no boxes is roughly $500. Go to cookcountytreasure.com, put in your address, and you will be able to see whether or not you've overpaid on any piece of property in Cook County going back 20 years, and whether or not you've gotten your exemptions. Thanks.
Register for the Rainbow Push Coalition and Citizenship Education Fund Wall Street Project Economic Summit at the Sheraton, New York, Times Square Hotel. Join Reverend Jesse Jackson and others for one-on-one conversations and panel discussion on the racial wealth gap. To register for Wall Street Project Economic Summit, go to rainbowpushwallstreetproject.org.
He's a long-distance runner and continues to cover lots of ground. Greenville native, beloved son, former presidential candidate, and our president and founder, Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr., and staff continued their voter registration crusade in Orangeburg, South Carolina.
The people cannot sleep this election. They must participate. For too long we didn't have the right to vote, the right to participate. Now we do.
South Carolina will play a key role in determining a presidential nominee in the South Carolina primary today. There are 47,000 eligible African American voters in Orangeburg, with 13,000 African Americans unregistered, and Orangeburg is 62.2% African American. Reverend Jackson and staff continued Get Out the Vote efforts at a rally at Lincoln High School in Sumter County, South Carolina, encouraging everyone to allow their voices to be heard and to vote their hopes, not their fears.
I am God's child. My mind can receive it.
Next, they moved on to Columbia, South Carolina, where Reverend Jackson was invited by Reverend Daryl Jackson and his wife, Willie Mae Jackson, to fellowship with the congregation at Bible Way Church of Atlas Road. There are 44 members of the South Carolina Legislative Caucus. They are second only to Mississippi in their number of Black Caucus members. Reverend Jackson was honored by the Legislative Black Caucus in the state capitol in Columbia for his years of service to South Carolina and to the world. During an event honoring the military and their families, Reverend Jackson delivered the benediction and met the many families.
We must never surrender to indifference, invest in our children, never surrender, and go forward.
And while Reverend Jackson was in Charleston to attend the Democratic presidential primary debate, he received a beautiful surprise as there was a well-deserved tribute to Reverend Jackson, along with civil rights icon John Lewis. Reverend Jackson, Rainbow Push Coalition, and several other groups have helped to register milestone numbers and continue their crusade to emphasize voting matters. Today, Reverend Jackson is in Selma to commemorate the 55th anniversary of Bloody Sunday on March 1st, 2020. Keep hope alive. Voting matters. Souls to the polls. It's that time of the year again. Students from all over the Chicagoland area will embark on the journey of a lifetime by spending their spring break traveling across the country, visiting more than a dozen historically Black colleges and universities, and being invited to a host of cultural and corporate sites. Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. and Push for Excellence kick off their much-anticipated 2020 HBCU College Tour, April 4th through 11th. So much of our history can be found within the walls of historically black colleges and universities. Students evolve while learning about their history and campus life. They meet and greet notable educators and student leaders, visit art galleries and historical archives, and become edified. Some are even accepted on the spot.
All 10 of them can now be Stillman College students. All 10. I just talked to Miss Kim. All of my babies, all 10 of them.
Their perspectives are forever changed. Education matters. There are many ways you can support this year's tour. Become a patron, be a chaperone, volunteer as a student ambassador, and or sponsor a student for our Push Excel HBCU tour. Meet and greet the tour bus along the way. Attend the official kickoff Saturday, April 4th, 2020. Contact your alumni group. Share your stories about your HBCU using our hashtag PEHBCU2020. For more information, go to pushexcel.org. Pushing for excellence. It's the best fun they never had, but starting April 4th, they'll sure be glad. HBCU, you know.
Here we go.
All right. You know, in a moment here, we're going to bring up for a program update from Reverend Jeanette C. Wilson. But before I do that, I want to thank again everyone for being here. We've had a lot of new people show up in the last few minutes. If you're in the back row, come on forward. You made it all the way here. Don't let the last 10 feet be the barrier between you and the action. We want to have you up here. The last thing that I want to ask everyone, quick round of applause if you've already purchased and picked up your copy of Keeping Hope Alive, Sermons and Speeches of Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Sr. This is one of the, I think, the best compilation that I've ever seen of all of the different speeches throughout his lifetime. So go ahead and pick that up. You can do it on Amazon. You can get it at your local bookstore and bring it by push and we can get it signed as well. Let's go ahead and switch over now to a program update from Reverend Jeanette C. Wilson. Round of applause, everyone.
Good morning, Rainbow Push family, Push Excel family. We are excited to be here. We have a number of programs that we want to share with you. As you know, it's almost time for our Historic Black College tour. But before I get into the tour, many of you watched the video and you saw our county treasurer, Cook County Treasurer, Maria Pappas, talking about property taxes. And I know you're saying, I live in Baltimore, I live in New York. What does that have to do with me? Well, everywhere you go, there are some property taxes that have been levied and that have been assessed against your home if you purchased a home and you're buying a home. Even those buildings that are rented, there are some assessments. What we want to make sure that if you have exemptions, if you have overpaid your taxes, you need to check with your county treasurer. Your county treasurer should be as committed to making sure that your money stays with you as our county treasurer does, Maria Pappas. You need to make sure that your property is not being gentrified, your property is not being taken over by the city, the county, for other purposes without your knowledge. So you want to make sure you check, and we'll be rolling out some more issues like that as we move towards our convention in June. We want county treasurers to be responsible to the county residents. Also, Trevor, and want to give Trevor a round of applause. He's our millennial MC, and you're gonna see more of Trevor and others like him on our broadcast. He talked about South Carolina primary. It's today. African Americans are 1/3 of the population of South Carolina. Therefore, we are the margin of victory for any of the candidates for president, vice president. Whoever is running for office, the state offices, there are some senators that are running. We need to make sure that in the state legislatures, we are focused and we are voting. So we expect South Carolina, you weren't the first primary, but you are the main primary that reflects America, and we want our people, all of our people, to turn out and vote today. Don't think you can wait till tomorrow, it's today. And Super Tuesday is coming up, and we have the Super Tuesday states. We're looking at Alabama, we're looking at Arkansas, we're looking at California, we're looking at Colorado, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, all of those states, you're going to vote on Tuesday. So we expect students, if you're enrolled in a college or university, check and see if you can vote on the campus where you are attending school. We want you to make sure you vote this coming Tuesday. It's Super Tuesday. I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm just telling you need to vote. And students, you are the margin of victory. You are the future and the present. You don't have to fuss and complain. Just go to the polls and vote your choice. And make sure that you're voting for people that will deal with student loan debt, which is one of our programs. Make sure you're voting for people that support elevating the minimum wage, because you're going to have to get a job to pay back some of the loans that you already have that before we did something about student loans. Well, make sure you're voting for people that say college tuition should not continue to rise. Make sure, parents, if you're a parent, you make sure that you're voting for someone that supports funding high-quality public education. If you're a senior, you need to make sure you're voting to make sure that Medicare is preserved. If you're unemployed and struggling, you need to make sure you vote, because Medicaid is at risk in this election. I can't tell you everything. You want to make sure that you're voting for somebody that deals with the toxic schools in our environment. Well, some of us are taking students across the country to what we call historic black colleges. We're taking not just African American students, but a rainbow of students to our HBCUs. And I know some of you are saying, I can't get on that bus. I can't ride 8 days. I can't do it. Well, I need you right now. You don't have to go, send go. Some of you can pay for a whole student to go because you have that kind of money. You got your retirement. That's $1,500. You can do that. Some of you say, I ain't got no $1,500. Well, you can drop $1,000. Well, then some say, well, I don't have $1,000. I got $500. Yeah, we want that because that will help us. They got to have snacks 8 days, 7 nights on the road. Got to feed them. Got to stop some places. The young lady that's going to follow me, she went on the college tour with us. Well, we need a hotel. Listen, it's a lot of money. So some people say, I only got $250. We'll take that because that will help us pay part of the way. Say part of the way. Then some of you say, I only got $100. You give me that $100. That will help us. That may be able to buy the water, the juice, or the snacks that are that we have. It's 8 days, 7 nights. Well, you say, I don't have $100. Give me your $25. If I had 2,000 people that are watching, wherever you are in America, you can support this. $25 is not going to break you. How do you give? Well, you can call us 773-256-2771, 2775, 256-2775. You don't want to call us? Well, you can go to rainbowpush.org. Text, and then you can click and donate. Or you can right now take your phones out. Everybody that's here, wherever you are, as long as you're not driving, take your phones out. Take your phones out. Look at me. Take your phones out. Text the word PUSH, push, to 41444. That's easy. You can give any denomination, whatever. It's $5, $10, $15. Whatever you give will make a difference, not just for the college tour, but for our oratorical students, for all of the things that we have, all of the programs. We need your support. Dr. Yuri is going to come and talk later about Wall Street. We can't go to Wall Street with no money. Wall Street costs, so we got to have some money. We need you to support us. Everybody can do something. Everybody can give a little bit. Membership is only $35. Some of you watching, you say, I love what you all are telling us. Well, we can't tell you if we don't have some money. We need to pay the people that put us on the air. We pay for the band. We pay for the music that you love Mayhan singing. Well, then show me some kind of sign. 773-256-2775. I'm taking a little slower because some people said they couldn't give last week because I was rushing. Well, I'm slowing it down for you. Text the word PUSH, P-U-S-H, 41444 on your phone. You go to when you text, it's just text to give. Some of you don't know how to do that because you don't have a cell phone. You got a flip phone. Don't worry about it. Just call us. 773-256-2775. I have to raise this money. Reverend Jackson is on the road. He's going to look for a report. I want to tell him that we did well like we did last week. Thank for all of you who gave. We are We need to raise $30,000 more, and I know if you all just do what you can do, it'll be all right. Thank you so much. We have a young lady who went on the college tour with us last year. She is what they call rising senior at Christ the King School. She's a phenomenal orator. She writes her own stuff. She's our new up-and-coming Maya Angelou. I want you to greet Eleanor Goodman as she comes at this time. Thank you.
Good morning. I'd like to thank you, Reverend Jeanette Wilson, for having me here, and I'd like to thank all of you for seeing me, supporting me. As she said, this is an original piece. I wrote it myself, and it is called Hush. Would you tell Martin not to dream? Would you force Gandhi to eat? Then don't ever, as long as you breathe, try to silence me. Because my particular form of artistry is the blood that pumps through my veins. It is a fingerprint. It cannot be repeated by anyone other than the Creator. My sweat, experiences, dreams, tears, the terror of corruption that haunts me each night, the white sheets with fire at the end of their sticks, and the Bibles they tote on their right-hand sides. That is where my inspiration comes from. The pains of being a brown-skinned girl mixed with the blackest of night skies, it drives me. The chill of goosebumps that my own feel when I speak is why I am still here. I am authenticity personified. I can never be anything other than what I am, and don't you dare ask me to. My ancestors spent too much time buckling down, too many rights distorted into separate but equals, too many church girls imploded in the name of the Lord, too many years in bondage, too much light skin is in, too much power granted to the wealthy and the ignorant, and they still survived. I am the descendant of the woman they called Moses. I am the living proof of King's dream. I am the definition of Malcolm's necessary means, and they did not go quietly, nor will I. So I'll ask you, would you ask Rosa to rise? Would you tell Angela to straighten her hair? Would you tell the Queen of Soul that she's gained all the respect she'll ever deserve? No? Then I'll say it for the last time. Don't, ever. As long as your lungs fill with air, as long as your heart beats, as long as I am black, don't ever try to silence me. Thank you. Now I will introduce to you Reverend Dr. S. Todd Geary, the Senior Vice President of National Rainbow Push Coalition.
Sometimes in our life, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me, come on, help me. When you're not strong, I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long. I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Go ahead, mommy.
Please swallow your pride. If I have things you need to borrow, for the merchant wise, we all may need
That's good. That's real good. Can we appreciate the band and their contribution to all of you who have gathered on this day? We are glad to see you. I am glad to be back with you after some time away, and the work still continues. And so as we have gathered, we gather to not only lean on one another, but to also walk with one another, because the struggle is still ahead of us. I am honored and privileged to stand in the stead and on behalf of our leader, the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr., who is always somewhere where there is a fight going on. And since he has been our champion for over 50 years, we continue to thank God for his heart and his health. He puts all that he has on the line for all of us, and we ought to at least appreciate him as he goes to work for us. A lot's been going on, and so I think it's important that we always start with the moment of framing where we are. Sometimes progress is hard to measure in the midst of the noise of what happens in the news. There are crises, everything from the public health issue of the coronavirus, but also to the virus that has become a bad politics in our country. We have been overwhelmed by an indifferent politics for so long now, it feels like it's the new normal. But every now and then you have to look for the glimpses of hope and possibility that come by way of news you may not have anticipated. This week we got some news. The anti-lynching bill on the House side that was sponsored by our brother, our friend, our leader, Congressman Bobby Rush, passed the House of Representatives. Y'all can do better than that. The anti-lynching bill passed the House of Representatives. And here's why it's important. The first anti-lynching bill was actually written in 1902. It has taken well over 100 years to get a public acknowledgement that mass mob violence that's racially motivated is wrong. This week, the House of Representatives addressed that issue, and now, because the bill has been written to conform with the Senate version that passed some weeks ago, the only thing left to happen is that the Senate must now vote up or down. They don't have to debate. They don't have to go to conference. All they need to do is vote on the House version of the bill that's coming back over, and then the bill goes to the president's desk for signing. In the backdrop, this is an opportunity when the president says, what do black folks have to lose? We gonna see. Will you sign this bill, or will you hold it hostage to the politics of racial cynicism that normalizes Charlottesville and denies racial justice? And so we celebrate and thank God for Congressman Bobby Rush, and so send him a note, tell him thank you for taking the lead on that bill. But this is also an important weekend because the first Sunday of March every year is the time that we commemorate the sacrifices of Bloody Sunday, the crossing of the Edmund Pettus Bridge, fighting for the right to participate in the franchise, the citizenship privilege of voting, the right to vote. And so we remember now this weekend, on the day when the South Carolina primary is happening, Super Tuesday is coming, that there is a lot at stake in this election. And it's not about the personality, it's about the policy. We don't have a personality problem in this country. We have a policy problem in this country. Reverend often reminds us that if your policies are not appropriate, doesn't matter what kind of face you give it, it's still wrong. We're dealing with whether or not the country will stand up for that which is right in what will be the most consequential presidential election in our lifetimes, where the balance of power in the Congress is going to affect our ability to protect the civil rights laws that were passed as part of that great process of challenging the Constitution's reach, and did it apply to everybody? But more importantly, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution are what we call the Civil War Amendments. They were amended to the Constitution in the aftermath of the fight over slavery, and slavery was an economic issue. This election is about the economics of our time. It's about who gets the value and who gets the blame. And too often, those who are at the bottom have been blamed for their condition, while those at the top continue to walk away with the benefits at their expense. The question for the rest of us, regardless of whether our state or status is of high possibility or maybe somewhere where we're starting with meager resources, we've got to put the best of who we are out there, because the balance of the power of the future of generations yet unborn is going to depend on what we do in the next 9 months. Here's why it's particularly important. Being born in the Deep South, I've had a chance to see how we normalize certain relationships. Sometimes we just embrace things as the way things are without questioning them. But when you then find the inner fortitude to decide that you're going to push back against that which has been normalized, you find in yourself the inner strength to stand and say, this is no longer acceptable to me, because who I am at my core demands better than this. If you don't deserve better than what you've gotten, then you just stand off to the side. Some of the rest of us got something else to fight for. And so we're not telling you you got to get in it, but what we're trying to tell you is don't get in the way of it. If we've got to move forward, we're going to move forward with who's ready to go. And sometimes that means you've got to challenge what has become the conventional thinking. As we are talking about how we lay this thing out, let me just start with a couple of things that you can do to help, and then I'll put some points on the table, and then we'll get ready to go back out in the street and raise this struggle. Is that all right? Here's what we got. One is we've got to invest in voter mobilization. We've got to register, educate, and mobilize in every primary in every state, because every vote absolutely matters. There are local, state, and congressional races even before you get to who's going to run for the presidency, and all of those elected offices have an impact on what happens in our communities. We've got to raise it. Here's how you can partner. You heard Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson talk about how you can support the work. Sending us to Wall Street for a trip is not what this is all about. We're going to Wall Street. Reverend is convening us in Wall Street because we're on a mission. We don't need a vacation. We got work to do. And so while we're going about the work, we've also got to do the work of helping to mobilize the vote. And so if you believe that we ought to engage in those places where very often our communities are oppressed and suppressed in their opportunities to participate in the franchise, here's how you can support it. You can text RPCGOTV, RPCGOTV to 41444 and put in the amount to help with our voter mobilization, our GOTV efforts. We've got to be serious about this work. And and if you can't text it, you can go to rainbowpush.org, scroll down, you'll see the banner to be able to click on it, and we'll be able to partner together, because we've got to get our folks to the polls by whatever process means is necessary, because every vote is going to matter. Now, because we're on a mission, somebody say mission. Yeah, see, when you're on a mission, mission is about mindset. Reverend often speaks to the mindset of who we are, that we ought to have a high insult level. Some things ought to offend us just because they're wrong. The reason we're going to Wall Street is because Wall Street has become the symbol of economic injustice that benefits an exclusive club. Take, for example, the top 400 wealthiest people in the country paid a lower effective tax rate than the bottom 50% of the rest of us. Something about that is just wrong. When we talk about the fact that companies are continuing to profit while poor communities are continuing to suffer, there's something wrong with that. We ought to be on a mission. When we talk about the fact that they're now looking to redevelop those places that have been economically devastated and calling them opportunity zones, we don't have a problem with opportunity, but we want to make sure that opportunity applies to everybody and not just the developers. And so if all we're going to do is pad bottom lines and we're going to exclude money managers and professional services and folks who have products that they're trying to get to market, if we're not going to address the access to capital question that is still an issue when community banks closed by the dozens after the stress testing of the last Great Recession, we've got to recognize that if we don't stand up and fight for what is in our best interest, we're going to be endorsing the suffering that's going to come as a result of our indifference. I didn't think that you all would kind of get with that because reality checks kind of make us a little uncomfortable. But I would raise for you this morning this story. It's told in all of the Gospels. John has a slightly different variation of it, and it's one day the disciples are hanging out. The crowds are following the work because they're impressed by the impact that Jesus and the disciples are doing. And about the time that the sun was setting, it was time to feed the people. The disciples said, Jesus, it's time to feed the people. Let's send them home because they're about to be hungry. How often have we heard that to be the response of the system, that just when the people's needs now rise to the forefront, it's time to dismiss them, to leave them to deal with their issues on their own? Jesus says, no, don't send them away. Have them sit down, and you're going to address the needs of the people. See, if we're going to be just in the 21st century, if we're going to do what's right by the least of these, we cannot send them away in the midst of their suffering and deny them the affirmation of human dignity. We've got to recognize that we have an obligation to address their pain. And many of us, we may not say it because we're in pain too. We're hurting because the healthcare system is stacked against us. We're hurting because we can't get a livable wage. Other folks are getting paid off the charge, corporate CEOs and the like, but we can't get a $15 an hour bare minimum wage tied to the indexing of the inflation rate for those who have to watch this now, work every day and very often more than one job, just to be able to keep a roof over their head and lights on in the house. We've got to be able to recognize that now is the time for us to step up and stand up and not displace and deny the issues of the people in real time. Wall Street is not just a place, it's a symbol. Wall Street is only 8 blocks long. It's one of the shortest streets that you're going to find in New York. But symbolically, it is one of the most powerful places in terms of its impact, because as we've seen this week, just from the mere concern that this virus that cannot yet be contained is scaring the markets have dropped exponentially in times that we've not seen, and everybody's about to panic, not because people are dying, but because rich people are losing their money. Something's wrong with that. We've gotten our mindset displaced because we're more concerned about the wealthy, and we have no concern for the needy. When we look at the budget that the president is putting forth, nobody's challenging the fact that while we're continuing to invest in corporations, we're disinvesting in education, in fair housing. We're disinvesting in those who need supplemental nutrition. We used to call them food stamps when we had the coupon booklet. Now they get the electronic card to be able to do something, but you got to be able to put food on your table. And that was the dilemma. 5,000 people been hanging out. And just when it's time to address their issue, they want to send them away. Tell your neighbor, I ain't going nowhere. First thing is we've got to recognize that simply because they try to make you leave does not mean you have to leave. There was a mantra that we used to say back in the days of the movement when they told us we could not stand where we needed to stand to raise the issue that we needed to raise. Every now and then you've got to find a little bit of indignity, maybe even a lot of it, and just stand your ground and say, hell no. We won't go. Y'all better talk back to me. I think y'all heard it before. Every now and then, we've got to find the sense of resistance that says we will not accommodate injustice for the sake of expediency. If we must disrupt, if we must disturb, if we must make folks lose sleep at night, if we got to show up at City Hall, if we got to show up at the Town Hall, if we got to show up at the White House, if we have to show up at the Congress, and oh, by the way, yes, if we got to go to Wall Street, we're going to go wherever we have to go to make sure that the needs of the people are not denied. Here's what Jesus says to the disciples. No, we're not going to ignore them. We're going to affirm them. The issue is, number one, is that we must make sure that the human dignity of every single person is not only affirmed, but it's protected. When you take the problems of people and you push them off to the side, basically you're saying not only is the problem not important, the people who have the problem don't matter. Everybody matters. That was at the root of the Poor People's Campaign when Dr. King was putting that in place, that led Reverend Jackson to begin to start Operation Breadbasket, and now has us here in 2020. It is the affirmation that everybody matters. You know what Reverend says, I am somebody. Everybody is somebody, and if we push the somebodies off to the side, it leaves everybody else to walk away with their interest unchallenged. Jesus says, make them sit down. But then there's this usual response that we hear from the system. We don't have enough to address the needs of all these folk. Y'all heard that before, right? We go to the government and say we need more for education. We need more for fair housing. We need an anti-poverty program. Well, they say we can't afford that. We need to take care of the issue of reparations, damage for the harm that's been done. We can't afford that. We don't have enough. Well, that's always the excuse, but simply because they give you an excuse does not mean you should back down from your demand. Don't change your mind about what is your right, what's your entitlement, simply because somebody said they don't have it. Can I tell you something? They got it for some other stuff that they want. Other folks get what they need. Other communities get what they want. Why is it that those that are the least amongst us that are always put last on the agenda? Here's what they forgot. They forgot that sometimes the issue is not what I have on the outside, it's what's driving me on the inside. See, if you affirm the human dignity of people, they tap into what's on the inside of them, and then they use it to propel themselves into the place of not only recognition, but affirmation. If we're going to have, in this year as we go to Wall Street, a call for a moral economic agenda, it's immoral to put the needs of the masses on hold for the benefit of a few. It's immoral to not close the racial wealth gap, which is wider today than it was before the Great Recession. When black families have 10 cents on the dollar of wealth to white families, that's immoral, and we must call it out. When you have highly qualified, highly competent, highly trained black professionals who can't find access to the careers in white corporate America, that's immoral. When we don't have representation on corporate boards and the boards reflect who's getting the money, but the people who buy their products reflect the rest of us, something about that is immoral. And if we don't call out the immorality of an exploitative economic system, then we're going to then be co-conspirators with the system that's trying to deny us. Jesus says, tell them sit down because they matter. And then they say, well, we don't have enough. He says, well, give me what you got. See, here's what I want you to understand. Simply because somebody says that they didn't think about you when they were trying to figure out what the budget was, does not mean that you cannot force them to change their priorities because you decide that you're not going nowhere. Jesus says, you may not have enough for everybody, but you got enough for them. And so now we need to make sure that the issues of our community are raised up, because the next thing we need is we need to make sure that the communities that are disaffected have economic prosperity too. At the end of the day, we know what it's like not to have had enough. But if we look at the last 400 and now 401 years almost of the economic enterprise in the original 13 colonies that was known as slavery, when they got centuries of free labor, either by the process of slavery or prison leasing, prison convict leasing in the country. There's a lot of capital that flowed at the expense and exposure of the most vulnerable, and no one has gone back to say we must do right by this. The notion is that somehow or other trickle down works. Trickle-down economics, I believe you remember when Ronald Reagan was running the first time, and he was running against Bush 41. They were competitors in that first primary. And remember, Ronald Reagan started talking about trickle-down economics. And remember what George H.W. Bush's response was? He said trickle-down economics was voodoo economics, that there was something evil about the economic system. But watch this. When you get the alignment of interest before you know it, what did Ronald Reagan do? Instead of making George H.W. Bush his competitor, he made him his colleague, because then when you align the interest, it doesn't matter what you call it as long as you're benefiting from it. We got to call it out for what it is and make sure that the economic prosperity of the nation, it advances the interest of the masses. So here's what we got: dignity, economic prosperity, and then you got to have courage. So remember, they have this issue, 5,000 people, not counting the women and children. These just the men. They're hungry, and the disciples aren't prepared. Little boy happens to be walking around that day, and thank God for somebody that had a plan. He happens to have his little lunch sack with him. It's got 5 loaves and 2 fish. Now, we know if we were to think rationally about it, if you only got 5 loaves and 2 fish, surely you cannot feed 5,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fish. Well, this isn't about whether you can feed all of them, but you can feed some of them. What are we going to do with the 5 loaves and 2 fish of the United States budget that gets passed trillions of dollars? You may not be able to address all the issues, but you can address some of the issues. You may not be able to fix every problem, but you can fix some of the problems. Y'all ain't talking to me. See, at the end of the day, we're so accustomed to being excluded, we like being last because somehow or other that's become the norm. We'd rather be in the line. But no, I don't just want to be in the line. I want to be on the agenda, because if I'm on the agenda, my place in line, eventually they're going to call my number. Can I tell you, anybody ever been to the post office? You know, the post office, they have these little things, these little dials, and you take the little tab, and the tab's got a number on it, and you got to go wait until you see the number on your paper come up on the sign. That's for the post office. That's not for politics. You don't have to wait for your number to be called. What has called your number is that you're a citizen. You determine when your number gets called by raising your voice to make your voice heard and your demand known. Because now what you have is the third and final thing is that you got to have agency. You got to have the courage to take what's available, use it for the benefit of the economic prosperity of the most vulnerable, so that then they have agency. Say agency. I know it's Saturday, it's a little warm in here. We get a little sleepy when the temperature gets above a certain point. But agency is important, because agency is the ability to self-determine. I should not be limited in terms of my possibilities because the structure is stacked against me. I ought to be able, as a byproduct of the structure, to be equipped and empowered to do all that my heart and my head might inspire me to do. And so in the process, agency is not some abstract. Agency is what we called back in the day power to the people. Power to the people is what this is all about. This is about making sure that the people have what they need to determine for themselves how they will affirm their dignity. I need to tell you this. There was a study that came out a few weeks ago that said that there was an intentional devaluation of the properties of black folk as opposed to white folks as standard practice. Now, here's where y'all supposed to say, no, for real. You already knew that. But when the system now has to admit it, it ought to remind us that we have not yet reached the point where we can trust the system to police itself. We've got to make sure that we remain present until our needs are addressed. What are you saying? I'm glad you asked. The 5,000 people, they didn't leave until they got what they needed. Don't you go anywhere until you get what you're supposed to have. Don't you change your mind until they take your needs seriously, and don't you back down until somebody recognizes that you have dignity and agency. You have the recognition to be able to say, I'm black and I'm proud, but at the same time to say, until I get what is mine, my dignity will not allow me to endorse your treating me the way that I'm not supposed to be treated. We ought to stand up, rise up, speak up until we get all that we are supposed to have. Now, before I get ready to go to my seat, I got to go. I know I said that 2 times. Preachers get 3 times. You know, that's what we do. We got to pass 3 exits before we finally take the one before the road runs out. So I got one more. At the end of the text in John's Gospel, after the needs of the people were met, something interesting happens. Go home and read it. It says that the disciples picked up the scraps from the 5 loaves and the 2 fish that weren't enough to feed the 5,000. They picked up the scraps and walked away with 12 baskets full. Now, that's typically where church folk kind of get caught up in what they say is the miracle, but I want to talk about the mindset. See, it's interesting to me that those who claim to be of the entitled class, not concerned about the needs of the people, did not bring enough to be able to take care of the needs of the people, but they're carrying 12 baskets with them. I'm getting ready to talk to you about mindset for a minute. Those who control the system always walk around with the intent to benefit from the system, even when the system doesn't have enough to take care of your issues. Y'all missed it right there, so let me come back and replay it one more time. You only had 5 loaves and 2 fish that you hijacked. You didn't bring anything to address the masses, but you walking around with 12 baskets because you are entitled to benefit from every situation that you come across. And that's why I need you to be ready to fight against the structures that we are facing in 2020, because those that are running the structure are carrying the baskets and they're trying to benefit at your expense. Don't let them get their baskets. Let them not get a scrap until you get what you demand, because Reverend says that everybody is somebody. And if that includes you, tell your neighbor, I'm in it to win it. You ain't saying it to the right neighbor. Tell the other neighbor, I'm in it to win it. I ain't going nowhere. I'm not changing my mind. I'm not accommodating your low expectations, because I'm in it to win it. And until I get exactly what I am going to get, I'm going to say this: hell no, we won't go. If that's you, come on, thank God for the opportunity to struggle together, to fight together, to go to justice together. Now, as we get ready to finish this time, and Reverend Jeanette, you're going to come help me in just a moment. We've got to be serious about this. If you're not registered, get registered. If you've got a teenager in your house, they're going to be 18 before the general election. Don't just let them sign up for selective service. Let them sign up to vote. Let's make sure that everybody who has the will to fight has the tools to be able to fight. Because at the end of the day, you may not have what looks like a lot to everybody else, but you have enough to be able to address your concern. I thank you for giving me a bit of your time. I'll see you on the battlefield.
Sign me up, sign me up. Come on, put your hands together. Woo! I've been changed since the Lord has delivered me, huh? Yeah, you can stand on your feet if you want to. It's all right.